All right, everybody. I'm gonna be such a professional off the bat that, Boz, before I even ask you how you're doing, which I do care about, I'm gonna tell everybody to help support the show. Go to variednotrandom.com, check out all the cycles that we offer. There's on-ramp programs for barbell, dumbbell, bodyweight. Those upload right to the app. You can put them in your calendar. We make it easy. There's a whole series of get your first fill in the blank, strict pull-up, kipping pull-up, bar muscle-up, ring dip, handstand, walk, toes to bar, you got it. And then there's a bunch of barbell stuff as well. So check that out. And if you own a gym, btwb has an all-in-one for you. Workout tracking, gym management, and billing, all the stuff that you need on one platform, one software. Go to btwb.com and make your life easier. Adrian Bosman, how are you?
You know, Pat, I'm doing okay. There's definitely some ups and downs recently, but there's some big ups right now. So it's
Oh, that's good.
yeah.
Okay, well, you know what? The economy is at all-time highs, and so are you. Okay, here we go.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. Oh boy.
So
I wouldn't say all-time high in my specific case. Well, the economy may be roaring, Pat.
stock market, at least. We've got a good question that you sent to me from a VNR listener, and by the name of Jonathan. And this is the question: do you have to be part of a CrossFit box in order to learn intensity? In order to learn how to keep your finger near the flame, to use Adrian's metaphor? As a strength coach for our Army's service members, I conclude that they need a like-minded group around them. As individuals, they just don't get it. They don't understand the need to get uncomfortable to increase work capacity. So, short answer, can you be a lone wolf and bring the heat, or do you have to be in the pack?
Oh my goodness, this is such a great topic because, you know, my favorite questions are the ones that seem pretty simple out the gate, but when you start peeling back the layers of the onion, there's actually a little bit more than you thought beneath the surface. I think this is exactly one of those questions. And I'm going to reference back to a couple weeks ago, we released a show to...
I was thinking of that same one.
talking about intensity, right?
Yes, sir.
And in that, if you guys made it to the end of that episode, I was talking about how, look, if a really ridiculously high level of intensity, meaning you're bringing it and redlining every single day, if that's a necessary component for success, yeah, exactly. If that's a necessary component for success, the program wouldn't work. And so I'll start there, kind of where I left off with that thought. If this gentleman has a group of individuals that he's training, yeah, I mean, pushing yourself past the point of a little bit of discomfort, getting out of breath, getting into that zone where you're like, wow, this kind of water I haven't tread in before, like, yeah, that's a good thing, and that is necessary to start driving adaptation. However, just because you're not pushing yourself as hard doesn't mean that it was a wasted session, or doesn't mean that you're not going to make any progress. You might make less optimal progress, but it doesn't mean that you're just going to be sitting there spinning your wheels. So let's start there and say that, hey, okay, maybe if we were to believe that somebody working out solo just couldn't get there to the same level of intensity as somebody who's with a really hard charging group, yeah, maybe their progress might not be as rapid. However, it's not going to be all for naught. So that's maybe the ground level that I want to start on, and then we can kind of take it from there.
Yeah, I think that's nice, just to reset the conversation that high intensity does not necessarily mean maximal intensity, and luckily maximal intensity is not required to drive results in a positive direction.
Yeah, and the movement selection and the program that you have, even if you're going through it with like a less intense approach, you will find some intensity just by the nature of the combinations of movements and the workouts that are put together. So you kind of can't avoid it, although of course effort matters. Effort matters,
and it depends upon the group of individuals. It sounds like Jonathan's got himself a group of hard chargers here, you know, in the Army. And it depends on if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s, because as important as, you know, intensity does drive adaptation and results, but the degree, you know, relatively speaking, how high the intensity can be, how frequently you can dance with that devil will vary also, probably again, based upon which decade of life that you're in, that, you know, it might be oversimplified of like, they're not going hard enough by themselves. Okay, but at a certain point, you could go so hard so frequently later in life that you're wrecked and now you don't train properly for the next week because you just don't feel like you can recover, and you put yourself in such a deficit that it's counterproductive. So there's this wonderful balancing act and handoff and symphony that can occur, of pushing yourself appropriately hard and making sure that you're getting enough rest, adequate sleep, and easing off the gas if you have to every now and then so you can bring the heat again. And that's a dance that all of us do, and that dance, the tempo of it changes based upon a whole lot of environmental factors.
Yeah, for sure. So let's dive into maybe some of the specifics of this question. And the specific question of like, okay, can you learn intensity better with a group of individuals? I think the short answer is going to be it's easier. It's always easier to have a group of people around you when it comes time to put the pedal down, where they're also doing the same thing, and you start to kind of feed off of each other. I think that that is true for so many different environments. You think
peer pressure is a real thing.
or even just rising to the level of those around you. It doesn't even have to be peer pressure. And I'm thinking, you remove yourself from a workout context and you think about like learning Spanish. If you're around a bunch of other people that are also learning Spanish, it's probably going to be easier, even if you're self-motivated, than doing it on your own. The same is true when you're working out. And
you surround yourself with a bunch of people that eat well and work out, or do you surround yourself with a bunch of sedentary people that are just stuffing Kit Kats down their throat?
Exactly. And I'll take it all the way back to one of the early taglines from none other than Greg Glassman, which was, hey, men will die for points. And as soon as you have a group of people that, you're just kind of working out together, even if it's not like a hyper competitive environment, it's almost inevitable that you're going to look right and say, what's so-and-so doing over there? Are you going to look left and be like, you know what, I think I can keep up with that individual. And then they are doing the same thing. And before you know it, you're both holding a pace that was a little bit more hot, let's say, than what you would have done without that kind of external pressure. And I think this is true for almost everybody. I'll give you a great example. And I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, but my mom has, over the last couple of years, she started going to a local gym up where she lives in my hometown. And they have a seniors program. And, she's been rocking and rolling with it. And it's really fun to hear her progress.
That's cool.
And, yeah, it's been great. It's been, it's really fun to hear how she's doing there. And I'll tell you, man, it brought a big smile to my face. This was probably earlier this year, like in the beginning of the year, where we were texting about something and she was talking about how like, I'm still not a great runner and that's not really what I like to do, but man, I can take it to those ladies on the deadlift. And I was like, that's Mom.
Awesome.
And so that's like her jam. And when the deadlift comes out, like, yeah, she's competitive and she's like rocking and rolling and she's keeping an eye on the group. And I mean, we're talking about, a woman who athletics has not been an important part of her life. Like that's just not, what she's focused on. And yet later in life, in a demographic that I think a lot of people would kind of write off as being quote unquote competitive, it's like, there it is, it's creeping in. So it's a great example of how, a group of people can be motivating and it's going to show up in ways that maybe you didn't even expect.
Yeah, true. And I guess I'm looking at his question here. It says, the first one, do you have to be part of a CrossFit gym to learn intensity? And, and then in the second paragraph, he mentions, the difference between a group dynamic and an individual dynamic. And I think you touched on the group dynamic there very nicely. It's funny because this individual works around Army people. So the answer to his first question, which is, do you have to be part of a CrossFit box to learn intensity? I would say the answer is no with regards to that. In my personal opinion, it's not necessary because you've got people walking into CrossFit gyms from all walks of life, right? And they could have come from group environments like Jonathan's talking about. Before they even walked into the CrossFit gym, they had that drive and that spark because they were a college wrestler. They were on the football team. They were a track athlete. They were in the military. They fill in whatever it is. And then they walked into a CrossFit gym and they already had that wizard pepper in them, right? I mean, you didn't need to instill that. If anything, their coach might need to tone it down a little bit, once they walk into the gym and they're getting back on their fitness journey and all that. But generally speaking of the group versus the individual atmosphere, I agree with that. I think it's those people out there who are the lone wolves, the John J. Rambo that can just light themselves on fire alone with no external motivation. They exist, but they're probably far more rare than the individual that is cut from the average cloth, that gets around to people, they hear the rah, 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 the music's pumping, they're like, okay, you know what, I wasn't fired up, but let's do this. I think that group atmosphere lends itself really well. Then you've got the genius of the whiteboard, you're tracking scores, there's a visual incentive as well to be at certain placement on the leaderboard, and that all comes together too with the movement selection and the workout and all of that to lend itself very well to depressing the accelerator, probably far more than people would on an individual basis alone in their garage. But those folks do exist. I will go ahead and say that as well.
For sure, but there's a reason why there's only one Miko Salo, for example.
Right.
If you don't know that name,
yes.
Go look him up. I mean, the man is legendary for just being able to totally isolate and just bring the heat with nothing else going on. We're talking no music, no external motivation whatsoever, and he's still just an absolute savage. There's a reason people remark on that, and it's because it's relatively rare. Most people are going to need at least something to help kind of keep that fire stoked. Now, that said, I do think it's important to understand that, hey, if you are somebody who's working out on their own most of the time, that doesn't mean you're like doomed to some subpar fate.
Far from it.
Yeah, and there are some tools that you can use, maybe not on a one-for-one kind of exchange with a training partner, but they can certainly help to add some motivation to you. And I think it's important to frame this, not just in the context of the workout that you're doing today, although it can help, but when we're talking about what happens the next session, the next week, the next month. These habits that I'm about to talk about are the ones that really compound and help to add a more permanent motivation during those sessions. And they're really simply keeping good notes and keeping track of your sessions. I mean, hey man, the btwb app is amazing for that. And then referencing those and coming into the session with a bit of a game plan. That whole idea around looking at some of these objective measurements for a workout can be extremely motivating. And if not motivating, it can, at least over time, as you're familiar with your abilities, it can push you into a more intense realm without you really even knowing it. Because you just kind of start to fall into the groove of like, okay, well, I could do 12 reps unbroken last time. I'm going to try for 13 this time. Well, right there, you've ratcheted up the intensity just a little bit just by knowing what you've done in the past and trying to exceed it, even if it's just like a razor thin margin. And so over time, that becomes a really powerful way to maintain and increase your intensity level, even if there's nobody else around that you have the opportunity to push off of.
And there's the rare bird that the group environment backfires in, right? We had that conversation, like all of a sudden everyone's gathered around Adrian Bosman cheering rah, 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 and he goes, you know what, everybody? I'm going to go ahead and pump the brakes a little bit. Screw you people. So, it can go either way. When's the last time, you work out a lot by yourself in your garage? So do I. When's the last time you decided to like light it, just to send it?
It's funny. Yesterday night was actually a great example. And I will say, this is kind of on the opposite end of the argument. I did have a partner last night. My buddy called me up. He works kind of late shifts. And so he usually works out later in the day. I don't mind a later workout. I've been taking care of a project that's eaten up a lot of my daylight hours. And so he got to my house about 7 o'clock in the evening. And we started our workout. And the workout was a good one. This is actually a Brian Shontosh brainchild. So a cool 155 on the bar for 12 power cleans, followed by a 400-meter run. You're going to do 5 rounds of that, but the catch is after every round, you've got a 4-minute rest. So each round is basically, just a 12-rep power clean, followed by a 400-meter sprint, full recovery times 5. And
beautiful.
And my buddy Austin, who I did it with, he was hard charged and he was talking a good game. I'm going unbroken on all the power cleans, and I have not been lifting enough. I've got no business, and there was no part of me that knew that I was going to do unbroken. But I'll tell you, man, I took way bigger bites on every round than I would have if I was to just set up and do that on my own.
That's
and
cool.
It ended up being one of those sessions where at the end of it, I was like, whoa, I cooked myself pretty significantly on that one and did not expect to. So it was a good time.
That's pretty awesome. I had a similar experience. I think, what are we at? What's today? Wednesday? I guess it was last week. Yeah, last week, I think on Friday, we did Fran at Linchpin.
Oh, yeah, you told me.
Oh, and I just had dread. I had so much dread. And I chose to do it, I chose to embrace violence, boss. I chose the dumbbell option, a pair of 50-pound dumbbells. And I was like,
dude.
And I was like, why not? Because then I was like,
dude, I could give you 3 reasons why, like just without even thinking about it.
Well, it's funny because I kind of chose it as a reason to let myself off the hook.
Sure.
And it backfired because I was like, this is going to be miserable. Like, this isn't going to go well. It's going to be miserable. I'm going to break it up a ton, and it is what it is. And then as I was walking out there and I was warming up, I don't know why. I just said, you know what? Today is going to be one of those days. I don't have no clue why I made that decision. Like right before it almost started, I said, I want to see, and by the way, I went full psycho, no music, no nothing. I'm like, I want to see.
Full Miko Salo.
Full Miko Salo. I want to see if alone in my garage with no music, I can have this workout almost end in an ambulance ride. Like that's what I'm going for. And dude, like I haven't in a while. I went for it. Mission accomplished. I squeaked in just under 5 minutes, 4:59 on the dot with the dumbbells. And again, relative intensity, right? Super happy. Like, I'm just about 1 year from the hip surgery and all that. Super happy with how the dumbbells moved. And it's been a while since this happened. The 5 minutes after the workout were real bad. I was trying to walk, but walking wasn't comfortable. Take a knee that wasn't comfortable. Lay down that was like couldn't get comfortable. And then around the 5 minute mark, I went into the side yard and I dry heaved. And it has been a long time, my friend, since that happened. So I brought the heat. So it can be done solo, but also that is unusual. So I could probably bring a lower yet average speaking, higher level, if the buddy came over every now and then. But every now and then one of those comets flies through the air, and one flew through the air last week. And it changed the course of my day. I had that stupid Fran cough all day long. I didn't feel right for the rest of the day. And it's all good. But
awesome.
I do have, piggybacking off of your things, some individual tips as well, because I work out alone a lot in the garage. And I've got a community of a lot of people rolling solo as well. On btwb, like the Tempest app is fantastic. And on one of the days, I think you were occupied on a work trip, I did a show with Jake from btwb, and it's all about Tempest. I'm sorry, everybody, I forget the number right now, but go back and check that out. But we dove into that whole deal and what it is. But basically, you can use the app to race somebody anywhere around the world on the workout. And I've used it a bunch, and it does give you the butterflies, even though they're not standing in front of you. And I can only tell you from me, like I push harder when I use Tempest. So that's really cool, and it's at your fingertips. I've also seen people, and again, I can only speak for like in Linchpin, but like they can like buddy up, like in the private Facebook group with the squad feature in btwb, and they go back and forth. They're competitive with each other. They know they're looking for each other each day. They're gunning for each other. One person does it in the morning, one does it in the evening, and they swap, and that's just really cool camaraderie as well.
And that can be, let me pause you there, because I've used that tactic on like a in a low tech way for a long time, where it's just as easy as like, hey, I'm doing this workout on Monday. I text you on Saturday, let's say. And you're like, yeah, cool, I'll do it too. And then there's a little bit of gamesmanship that creeps in around like, okay, I think I can take Pat on this one or whatever. And so even if you have like a buddy who's in a different time zone or whatever, if you can have that little accountability, it goes a long way.
100%. And then the one which I love, which makes me laugh, which is a bit on the more the clandestine side, is there are people who admit that like, they've been in the group long enough where they're looking at everyone's loads and times, and you get to know people, and then without even knowing, somebody selects somebody else as a rabbit, and that person has no idea that somebody else is gunning for them. But in secrecy, they watch every day and they're like, what did they get on Helen? Oh, I'm going to get them. And they're motivating this other person. And they usually, it comes out like months later and they're like, I've been chasing you for a month, by the way. And you're like, no kidding.
That
really
is
cool.
Old school CrossFit.com main site behavior. I feel like we
100%.
all used to do that to some degree. You'd find some regular on the main site, excuse me, that was around your level, or maybe just out of reach, and you just try to take them down when you could.
Yep.
Yeah, that sort of thing is very, very motivating for sure.
And lastly, just posting your results. You might not be a part of any fitness community. You might just be totally, lone wolf, working out in your garage, using the btwb app. But if you post, and if you don't have a private account, everybody can see what you post on the world leaderboard. And there is some accountability. People will say, like, I know that every day, like, I'm going to post and people are going to see, and they're doing, maybe the same workout every back squatted today or whatever it is. And like, there's some accountability and just incentive to not lollygag just because I'm going to share this with the world, So, and that's kind of, it's that virtual whiteboard, if you will. And so all those things can lend themselves, regardless of whether you're in a group setting or if you're in an individual setting. There is some way that hopefully you can kind of make sure that you're depressing the gas pedal appropriately to drive some positive adaptation in your training.
Yeah, and I'll add one to the pile, and I think this is stolen from you big time, but I think that's one of the coolest things that you do conceptually when you're looking at the week of programming that you're doing, and that's to really state it ahead of time. Which one of these workouts are you really going to bring the heat? And it does two things. Number one, it commits you to, like, okay, on Tuesday, for example, I'm going to go in and it's like, it's business. Like,
burn the boats.
We're doing it, yeah. And it also gives you that little pressure release valve where you're like, okay, you know what, Wednesday, yeah, this is going to be a hard chipper or whatever the workout is, but mentally I don't have to just like destroy myself. It's going to be fine.
Right.
And you kind of save yourself for those dedicated efforts that you've established ahead of time, because it is very hard to make that decision midway through a workout. Like nobody is going to get halfway through that workout that I just described with the power cleans and the sprints and get to round 4 and be like, you know what? Now I'm going to turn it up. It's like, no, dude, you're already in the hole at that point. Right. It's only going one way. You have to have established that ahead of time in order to really make sure that, that level of intensity is going to be reached. So I think that's a really powerful tool, and one that I don't know that you know kind of how unique that is or how powerful it can be, because I think it's just routine for you, but that's one that I think is really, really a great habit to get into.
Yeah, it certainly served me well, so hopefully some other people can benefit from it as well. And I think that's all I got for Jonathan, to be honest with you.
Same. Yep.
All right. So Jonathan, as a former Navy guy, you better bring the heat with those Army people. You better bring the heat. You understand? So anyway, we appreciate what you're doing. Thanks to everybody for watching and listening. We appreciate the support. If you've got a thought on today's topic, go to the btwb YouTube channel, find this show, post your thoughts in the comments. We read all those things. You can also post a thought for a future topic or discussion, or you can go to the Very Not Random Instagram account and leave a public comment, or if you want to be anonymous, you can send a direct message on the Very Not Random Instagram account, and all those things make their way to us. So appreciate the question, Jonathan. For Adrian Bosman, I'm Pat Sherwood, and we'll see you next time.